Thank you so much. My name is Emel Mathlouthi. I'm from Tunisia, and Mr. Umesh requested that I sing a small part from my song that was a hymn for freedom and a tribute to all the freedom fighters throughout the world, whether in my country, in the Arab world, in Palestine, Iran, Nepal, or everywhere else. We all have the same quest. We all want dignity, freedom, and justice. And we have to side together, not side with other oppressors. Because even if we oppose our governments, we have to stand by each other. The song's name is Kalimti Hurra, which means my word is free. And the lyrics were written back in 2007, and they were quite visionary because they describe what ended up happening in Tunisia. There's a verse that talks about the red rose that was set on fire, and all the people ran to save her. And the red rose is a metaphor for Tunisia because our flag is red, and with all the symbols behind the color red. So the song was kind of a prophecy because a few years later, a young fruit vendor set himself on fire, frustrated by the his lack of rights and justice. And he sadly passed, and that's when the Tunisian uprising started. أنا أحرار ما يخافوش أنا أسرار ما يموتوش أنا صوت المارسخوش أنا سر الوردة الحمراء اللي عشقوا حمرة سنين ليدفنوا ريحة نهار وخرجت بالحافة النار تنادي عالأحرار
Thank you very much, Ms. Emel, for that beautiful verse. I'd now like to request our team to please set up for our first panel discussion, which is From Protest to Possibilities. आन्दोलनबाट अवसरतर्फ भन्ने पहिलो प्यानल डिस्कसनतर्फ हामी अगाडि बढ्दैछौँ। म पुनः यहाँलाई जानकारी गराउन चाहन्छु, यहाँ हलभित्र उपस्थित हुनुभएका सम्पूर्ण अतिथि महानुभावहरूको हरेक टेबलमा हामीले क्युआर कोडको व्यवस्था गरेका छौँ। त्यो क्युआर कोडमा स्क्यान गरेर तपाईले चाहिँ नि हाम्रा सम्पूर्ण प्यानलिस्टहरूका लागि प्रश्न छोड्न सक्नुहुनेछ र ती प्रश्नहरू चाहिँ हाम्रो मोडरेटर ज्यूसम्म आइपुग्छ र उहाँहरूले पनि तपाईको प्रश्न चाहिँ नि यो प्लेटफर्म मार्फत हाम्रा प्यानलिस्टज्यूहरूलाई सोध्नुहुने जानकारी पनि म गराउँछु यहाँहरू सम्पूर्णलाई। त्यसै कारणले पुनः एकपटक यहाँहरूका केही प्रश्नहरू छन्। हाम्रा प्यानलिस्ट 4 प्यानलिस्ट हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ यो सेसनमा। उहाँहरूप्रति केही प्रश्नहरू छन् भने अवश्य पनि त्यो क्युआर कोड स्क्यान गरेर तपाईले प्रश्नहरू राख्न सक्नुहुने जानकारी म यहाँहरूलाई दिन चाहन्छु। Our first session From Protest to Possibilities, inviting our moderator first, the editor of the Kathmandu Post, Mr. Biswas Baral. Please join me in welcoming him with a big round of applause, everyone. And now taking this opportunity to invite our panelists, inviting Ms. Emel Mathlouthi one more time to please join us onto the stage as the panelist of this session. Along with her, also inviting Ms. Kamanthi Wickramasinghe, senior journalist, Daily Mirror, Sri Lanka. Inviting Marzana Mahnaz, Research Associate, Center of Governance Studies, Bangladesh. Also inviting Tanuja Pandey, a Gen Z activist from Nepal. I think Ms. Emel has stepped out for a bit, so if we can request her to please join us back inside this hall. यो आजको दिनको लागि हाम्रो पहिलो सेसन पनि रहेको छ आन्दोलनबाट अवसरतर्फ from protest to possibilities, and like Chairman Sir mentioned during his opening remarks as well, that we definitely have got diverse speakers, panelists in this Kantipur Conclave for day 1 and day 2, where they get to share their experiences from what has happened in their country, what are their learnings, their experiences, and how do we move forward. Thank you to everybody who's watching us live as well. हामीलाई यो प्रत्यक्ष प्रसारणबाट हेरिरहनु भएका सम्पूर्ण दर्शकवृन्द, श्रोतावृन्दलाई पनि हामी कार्यक्रममा स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छौँ। र ढिला नगरिकन अब म यो फ्लोर हाम्रा मोडरेटर विश्वास बरालजीलाई ह्यान्ड ओभर गर्न चाहन्छु। I think Emel is joining us shortly.
I think let's wait for a couple of minutes for Emel, then we'll start. She's here.
This panel discussion will be for an hour. यो 1 घण्टाको panel discussion हुने जानकारी म यहाँलाई गराउन चाहन्छु र पुनः एकपटक हाम्रा कोही पनि प्यानलिस्टका लागि तपाईहरुसँग केही प्रश्नहरू छन् भने अवश्य पनि त्यो क्यूआर स्क्यान गरेर त्यसमार्फत यहाँले आफ्ना प्रश्नहरू अगाडि सार्न सक्ने जानकारी पनि म गराउन चाहन्छु। धन्यवाद। Over to our moderator.
Thank you so much, Sajji. Welcome everyone to the inaugural session of Kantipur Conclave 2026, From Protest to Possibilities. Back in September, Nepal witnessed once-in-a-generation movement in which a lot of people died, a lot of people were martyred. It heralded significant changes in the country's ruling structure, and we are going to have an election soon. This Gen Z movement in Nepal was not an isolated case. It in many ways was a continuation of similar events around the world and in near and abroad, particularly in South Asia. But I think it all started, if you look back in 2011, it all started somehow in Tunisia, because back then we used to hear about this Arab revolt, Arab revolution, how this very small fruit seller in Tunisia set himself on fire because he could not even afford the basics in his life. So I would like to start this session with Emel Mathlouthi. When we heard a very soulful song, and you sang this in the context of the 2011 Tunisian revolution, right? So what were your motivating factor, and what were the conditions back in 2011 that made you and people like you revolt?
So the song was written before 2011. The song was written and I started performing it since 2007. And as I was saying, the song is kind of a prophecy. And the song actually traveled and made its way from word to mouth, because at that time I wasn't living in Tunisia anymore and I couldn't perform the song and other songs in Tunisia because it was under dictatorship. So basically Tunisia was colonized, and then it only had, since its independence in 1957, it only had 2 presidents up to 2011. So they were both dictatorships. So we were living under dictatorship. We grew up under dictatorship, and we don't know any other kind of reality. So of course, since I was very young, I was very animated by a quest for freedom. And when you live under dictatorship, there's so many layers to dictatorship, because people themselves, they start censoring themselves even before the dictatorship asks them to. So I was very frustrated and very angry from when I was very young, because I felt people really had this tendency of just basically accepting and acting like sheep and puppets, and I really didn't think that was healthy. And as a young person, I had aspirations, and unfortunately, under dictatorship, young people don't have a space to be heard or to create or to explore or to be curious. So I think that's the first part that I was able to realize even before I had any political knowledge. So I think, to me, every young person, when you start your path in life, you start by dreaming and by wanting things that, unfortunately, are basic rights in many parts of the world, but for us, they just stay dreams. They start as dreams, and unfortunately, they just stay dreams. And because of that realization, I totally understood very early on that there was a problem. And when I first realized that I had a talent, that I was able to carry my voice, I decided very quickly that I wanted to actually be the voice for the people who couldn't have a voice.
Yeah, so when you become this voice for people who don't have voice, you raised a voice, you took part in protests, you threw out a dictator. What then? What happened then? Are things in Tunisia significantly better than they were under the previous dictator?
So of course, in the first few years, there was so much confusion and back and forth, some chaos, not as much in other places. We are fairly lucky that we maintained a kind of peaceful transition. There were some attempts, but there was also some assassinations along the way. I feel like as soon as there's a person that has good hopes and has competence to lead the country, very, very, very fast, we lose those voices. So I think in the freedom of expression, everything changed. People are able to express themselves. They are able to say anything. There's more organizations. The newspapers are now real newspapers. But unfortunately, with the last presidency, things have turned bad again. And there's many people that are put in prison just for saying anything, journalists, lawyers, human rights organizations. It's very, very unfortunate and quite dramatic. And we don't know where the country is being led to.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that. So Kamanthi, we just heard from Emel of how there was this protest and there was hopes and dreams of young people, and they threw out a dictator, someone who had been running the country continuously for 23 years. Something similar happened in Sri Lanka in 2022. The context was completely different, I would say. But how, looking back in 2022, at 2022 and today, how do you evaluate the 2022 uprising, the overthrow of the Rajapakshas, and how do you link that to the current Gen Z movements happening not just in South Asia but all over the world? Was it a part of the same Gen Z movement, or was it completely isolated incident in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Biswas. And thank you for that question. So Sri Lanka was, initially Sri Lanka had a 30-year war. And soon after the war, we thought things were going to be peaceful until 2019 when the Easter Sunday attacks happened. And even during the Easter Sunday attacks, once Mahinda Rajapaksa stopped the war, he came for a second term, and then in 2015, people thought it was time for a new phase to rule the country. And then the good governance regime, I would say good governance regime was elected. But they failed to deliver the promises. And it was soon after the Easter Sunday attacks happened, and then Mahinda Rajapaksa's brother, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was elected. So Sri Lankans have always seen this dynastic politics coming back to rule them. And dynastic in the sense there was a lot of nepotism, there was a lot of corruption happening. And then soon after Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected in 2019, he was, soon after the Easter Sunday attacks, he thought the best way to go about the economy was to introduce sweeping tax cuts, which eventually ended up in an economic crisis. So the economic crisis actually, more than the common man, it affected the working class and the middle class, who first took to the streets because they were burdened with prolonged power cuts, there were fuel shortages happening, and it was them who were mostly burdened. So the middle class took to the streets, which eventually compelled the common man or people living in the lower rungs of society to also join the streets. And so few people gathered at the Golf Face Green, which is a very historic, iconic promenade in Sri Lanka. For anybody who have visited Sri Lanka, Golf Face Green, Colombo is a very common place. So there were few protesters on the first day, and it grew. People stayed overnight because they thought one day is not enough. And it soon grew into a people's movement. It was very peaceful. People, regardless of age, caste, gender, anything, people from all over the country started gathering to Golf Face Green, and that's how the protest movement started. So in modern history, this is the first time that Sri Lankans have seen such a huge protest movement happening in the country.
So the causes were primarily economic?
Yes, yeah. Economic, and also it later on went on to ending corruption and nepotism in the regime. So that's how it all started. And then after 50 days, things started there were certain changes that happened. For example, the government then thought this is going to be a threat to them. And then the attacks, there was police brutality to everything that happened. But it was a 120 long day protest. So people started celebrating Ramadan there, they started celebrating the New Year there, and it was like, they tried to make it a creative revolution. There were all sorts of cultural performances to celebrations happening, and this is when the political leaders thought it's going to be a threat. And the first attack happened on May 9th, where the protesters were brutally attacked. And then, but even with the attacks, the protesters bounced back. And So it continued until July 9th. July 9th was the day in 2022 that the leaders actually thought if they stayed back, people would actually come and attack them physically. So they had to flee the country, they resigned. The president and the president's brother was the prime minister who had to resign and flee the country. So that was the whole in a nutshell.
And then new elections were held, new government has come into place. So my follow-up question was, how does whatever happened in Sri Lanka in 2022 relate to the broader Gen Z movement?
Yes.
How do you see that?
Of course. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context. So primarily the people who came to protest, it had a majority of youth who were protesting there. And then I think the keynote speaker also said she would see the youngsters protesting, but there are no solutions. But we had some demands. The protesters had some demands. And one of the key demands was ending corruption and nepotism. So I think that translated into the present regime, which was elected in 2025, when President Kumar Dissanayake came in, and this is the first time Sri Lanka is being ruled by a left-wing government. So, and there are some of them are new to politics, some of them are new to parliament. So, but from a people's perspective, they seem to like the present government mainly for two reasons. There's no nepotism and there's no corruption. So I think the demands during the protests have been heard by the current regime. So whenever there is some minister going and trying to do something funny, people would always take videos and post on social media. So it has come to that point where people are saying absolutely no corruption at all.
Yeah, so. Thank you so much. Let me come to Marzana. One similarity between what happened in Nepal and in Bangladesh was that even in Bangladesh, it was a primarily university student-led movement, right? So it was a student-led movement which overthrew Sheikh Hasina government. And now you are going into elections day after tomorrow, your national election, right?
Thursday, yes.
So it's interesting because we also have elections in around 20 days' time, not long to go. And I'm looking forward to elections in Nepal with anticipation, a little bit of expectation, a little bit of fear. You are having elections 2 days after this conclave. What is your primary emotions about the elections?
Thank you for asking that question. The primary reaction right now, the situation right now in Bangladesh, it's very calm. But in previous elections in Bangladesh, we saw that the situation doesn't stay much calm, but it's calmer this time. And in general public, especially in the minorities communities, people are fearing because over the last 1 year and a half, we have seen the rise of fundamentalists. And
sorry, so would it be right to say that more than anticipation, you fear what will happen in elections,
yes.
right? Okay,
Put
please
it correctly,
continue.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, because the mob violence that has raised concerningly well in the past years. I'll just give one example. A few days ago, a Hindu man, he was burnt to death on the accusation of blasphemy. But later on, we found out that he didn't say anything blasphemous about the religion, the Islamic religion, but it was the mob who made it into it. So, and apart from that, we also saw an army of mobs burning down 2 largest news media houses in our country. The law enforcement agency, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't lift the fingers of the mobs from doing that. So personally, I feel fearsome. But after the protests happened in July in 2024, I would want to say our people, they are more politically aware than before. They're showing resistance and resilience, which were not to be seen before. Because, when July happened in our country, people realized that and had the sense that they can, if they want to, they can question the authority, they can ask for accountability if it's needed. So let's hope for the best.
I mean, a little difficult question maybe for you, but would I be right to say that the student-led movement in 2024 has somehow been hijacked by Islamist political parties?
Yeah, you can say that, because the leaders of the movement who marched forward, and they were in the front line, they are into the coalition with the Jamaat-e-Islami party in our country. We are also supposed to vote on a referendum this year. It has 84 provisions or more, but there's no choice for partial acceptance or partial acceptance. So when the referendum was firstly introduced, the July National Charter, the leaders of the protest movement, they came up with a new political party, National Citizens Party. They were kind of against the referendum, but when they got into the coalition with Jamaat-e-Islam, now they're promoting yes for the referendum, which they were initially not against.
So they also want to impose Sharia law. They want to ban women from politics. It doesn't look good.
Yeah. Yes. To be very honest, I fear that our country might just see an Islamic revolution in coming days if the Jamaat-e-Islam come to power, because they're openly slut-shaming women. They are saying that their women members of the party, they can't go top leadership, which is problematic, because they're saying it like this, that Islam prohibits it. But to be honest, they don't really practice the real Islam. They don't know how things should go according to Quran, but they are using it as a weapon, because in rural areas, the Jamaat candidates, they're saying that if you don't vote for Jamaat, you're going to hell. And if you vote for Jamaat, you'll be granted heaven. Oh, they are not to say who gets to heaven or hell in this world, right? So
yeah, okay, thank you so much. Tanuja, you were a very active participant in the Gen Z movement. You were at the forefront of the protest. Even we have heard other Gen Z activists say they were inspired by similar Gen Z movements around the world. How do you link the Gen Z movement last September to similar movements around the world? What kind of inspirations you gained from them? And how do you put this in the context of the global Gen Z movement, whatever happened in Nepal?
What we saw on September 8th was not a spontaneous anger, but rather the outburst of frustration that we had for a long period of time. And at that time, it was the end of the August when the JNG movement in Indonesia was taking place, and a lot of international students of Nepal were inspired by it, and they participated in this global Nepo baby trend, and they call out how the richest few are making the most out of the resources and the struggle of general people of Nepal, basically. And the JNG movement that happened in Nepal, I would rather call it a class struggle movement, because if you see the demand, it's all related to the economic injustice, it's related to the wage gap, and also the class disparity, basically. So we were hugely inspired by Indonesia's movement, and later on 8th of September, when the protest started, a flag, that we say one-piece flag, it was used, and it was basically used all over, even in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh during the movement. So there is a common factor. And I believe that movements like this are contagious. It's not for the first time it's happening in Nepal, because even before, I think it's 1930s when 1930 when Nepal's political movement was inspired by the Bangladesh movement. So it's not the first time it's happening, it's contagious. But I feel like our demand was organic. It was nothing to do with the demand of other countries, because people were frustrated by the failure of the system.
Can you
itself.
categorically say what your demands were during the movement?
Yeah, so basically first was the social media ban. However, I refuse to believe that social media ban was the only cause for the movement. The first thing was the reformation within political parties. If we didn't look for anything new or any new faces or new political parties. We demanded for the reformation within the existing parties. And second demand was a transparent system. Where the leaders should be accountable towards the public. So basically there was three demands. One was reformation, second was accountability and transparency, and third was the ban on social media should be removed. It was the three clear demands.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Tanuja. I'll come back to you. Emel, so 2011, you had this massive movement in Tunisia. You overthrew your ruler. That was followed by movements in Egypt and Libya and Yemen, so all over the Arab world. And these revolutions bring a lot of expectations with them. Do you think the expectations of the movement in the Arab world, largely, have the expectations been realized, or do you think in many ways things are much worse now than they were before the Arab Spring, Arab Revolution, whatever you call them?
You mean things in general?
Yeah, things in general in terms of freedom, in terms of economic rights, in terms of affordability.
I don't think it's constructive to keep going back and forth between is it better, is it worse. To me, we deserve to live a decent life where we can realize our dreams. We deserve to live without fearing to go to prison if we write something or if we say something. And so the revolution had to happen. And whether things got better or worse, to me, that's irrelevant, because we have been living under dictatorships and bad systems for so long in all the Arab countries. So therefore, one day it was set to happen. You know, when you put people under pressure for so long, when people's rights just to a dignified life aren't met, then one day it's going to explode. And to me, that's one of the beautiful things about the power of people, is that in the end, one day we realize that we actually do have the power to change things and to demand things. So, of course, a lot of things were obtained, but it's just, it keeps going back and forth, and we have been living under a corrupt system. We are the result of colonization. So therefore, there's so much to work on, and it needs time. And to me, like, when there's colonization and it ends, it leaves so much damage. And one of the damages of colonization is dictatorship. So it takes a lot of time to fight against that. And even though we thought for a second that we won and that we now have our country back in our hands and that everyone is going to live in peace and there's justice for all, is a little bit like of a utopia, sadly. So I do not want to look back and be nostalgic for the past where maybe things were a little bit more stable economically. I want to look forward and I want to believe that the best is still ahead.
Okay, thank you. So to modify my question slightly to Marzana, Sheikh Hasina was a ruler for a long time. There was a revolt. She was thrown out. She ran away to India. Then a new interim government is in place. Now we are going to have elections. But here you are saying that women might not get any say in the next government if the Islamist parties come on board. So these revolutions are always tricky, it seems. You wish for something and something completely different happens. So my question is, what can a country like Nepal learn from the revolution in Bangladesh and your, say, inability to hold elections for so long and the possibility of extremist forces coming to power? Are there any lessons that countries like Nepal that witnessed revolutions after you can learn from Bangladesh's experience?
Yes. When Sheikh Hasina was ousted, it created a vacuum of power, which actually gave the Islamists to, suck to the vacuum and impose their ideology and their conviction to the people. So it's better that Nepal is holding election way more sooner than Bangladesh did. So you're already ahead of us in one point. But if you want lessons, then when the student leaders were first proposed the party, National Citizens Party, we, the youth, the Gen Z, they really followed them. They put them in high pedestal, that they were the heroes of the protest. We should follow what they say, whether we should go with them. So I just want to tell to the Nepali Gen Zs, question the authority, question the heroes you had in protest, because sometimes maybe they don't want change, they just want to go suck to the vacuum and grab power in their own hand. Maybe they might have ill intent, so question them, question everything.
Yeah, so question your hero says, Marzana, you overthrew the government at the time, and now we are on the brink of elections. There are a lot of populists, new political parties are in the fray. How do you keep them honest? How do you ensure that they don't, these new generation leaders don't become another KPOD and you have to rise up again? What role do you see yourself playing in this new setup?
To correct one thing, we didn't overthrow the government. I believe they overthrew themselves by killing young protester. Regarding how, I agree with her, because not just in Nepal, but overall in South Asia, I feel like we have this horrible culture of worshipping our leaders as a god. And we have always kept our leader above the question. And I think it's high time that we should dismantle this entire process, ill practices. And the way forward I see from now onwards is that even today we see a lot of young people that we have open are relying their entire political journey on populism. And it's kind of threat to democracy, and I believe, I agree to her that there's the situation can get even more worse than before if we continue these practices. So the number one thing we all need to do is question even the new faces, because our parents Our parents has a huge role on creating what we have today because they failed to question their leaders. They worshipped them, and we should not repeat it. And second thing is that questioning is not enough. We also should work on strengthening our institutional memory, because every decade we see one protest and it leaves us to nothing, and then again we have to begin everything from ground zero. So it's high time we need to document the lesson that we learned from the protest and incorporate in our institutional memory. So I think doing this will help.
Yeah, thank you. So, Kamanthi, is the situation similar in Sri Lanka after the Rajapakshas went away? What are the reforms that have taken place? Are people's lives significantly better? I think, unlike other revolutions, the crisis there was mainly economic. People, the food prices were up. I mean, due to the overnight ban on organic fertilizers, there was a huge food crisis. So how is the situation now? How do you evaluate the post-Rajapaksa period? And to add to what Tanuja said, what is the role of the civil society and the media in shaping a more democratic future for Sri Lanka after the ouster of the Rajapakshas?
Thank you. So, as a result of some of the short-sighted decisions taken by the Rajapaksas, the farmers, for instance, are still they are affected by the overnight ban on fertilizers, for example. But since we have come forward, I think after 7 years, I think things are taking better shape, because the new government, when they came to power, their very elaborate manifesto had so many promises. For instance, bringing in a new constitution to stopping arbitrary arrests and arbitrary detention by revisiting draconian laws such as the Prevention to Terrorism Act and the Online Safety Bill, which is based on the Singaporean model, and it also is taking a draconian shape, for instance, and several other aspects. We moved in a new resolution at the Human Rights Council recently in Geneva. So they have so much on their table at the moment. So I think they are taking slow steps because they are new to governance itself. And but due to the fact that people have no other choice but to vote for a new face and a new party, the National People's Power was voted in. So I think people are giving them some time, but at the same time, they are keeping the ruling party in check all the time. Because whenever there is a short-sighted decision, people would be up in arms, the media would write about it, and they would actually respond, because some of the decisions that they took were reversed as a result of protests, and due to people were very upset about some of them. So I think they are quite responsive that way, and the new government has drawn lessons from the past mistakes, and they are, I think, one of the concerns during the previous regimes was the so-called advisors who were advising the president, etc. But I think this time there are more sane advisors who are telling them to listen to people and the media, etc. So that is that. And then the role of civil society and media, that is actually something that we are also concerned, because the civil society has been for the longest time asking reforms in various aspects, like education, to garment factory workers, to the estate community, because we have Indian origin and Tamils who have come down, and they make the majority of the plantation sector. So their rights, their voting rights, etc., are still to be established. So those kind of aspects are still being looked at. But overall, from the media aspect, like I said, the Prevention to Terrorism Act is being used to arbitrarily detain and arrest journalists, especially in the north, when when they go to cover protests or sensitive issues, because the north was affected by the civil war, and as a result, there's heavy militarization. And when when Sinhalese go to the Tamil-dominated areas, there still seem to be conflicts. There are land issues that need to be resolved. So there are issues, but on the periphery, things are very peaceful and people are happy about the government. So I think the pressure is there for the government at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we also have some questions from, we had called for questions online, and so we have some very interesting questions. So I'd like to start with Marzana. So there is a question from Gangaram Khanal email, which is sent by email. So his very short question is, did the CIA overthrow the government in Bangladesh?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. There are conspiracy theories. There are, if you want to connect the dots, you can, because you want to connect the dots. But I want to give the credit to my people who stand against Sheikh Hasina and her brutal authoritarian regime. Yes.
So just to add to that, how much did geopolitical factors play into Hasina's ouster, because India was trying to protect her and she was supposedly getting a lot of support from the Westerners. But like, how did you read things back then?
I think before the ousting of her, we didn't see much external factors, I want to say, because it was a collective effort, because it started as a student movement, because students felt discriminated by the reform quota system in the jobs, in the government jobs. But when the goons of Awami League and the law enforcement agencies started brutal crackdown, people just couldn't stay at home, because you didn't have to be at the streets to be affected by the crackdown, because there were stories like a 6-year-old girl, 6 or 4 maybe, she was in her balcony at the wrong time and she got shot. So these instances made people more angry about the previous regime, and they came down to the street.
Okay, thank you so much. So there is another question from Ramesh Panthi. This is from Biratnagar. It is for Emel. So the question is, your music became an anthem of the Arab Spring. How can art and culture sustain movements for change when protests fade from the streets?
Well, art and culture are crucial. They go hand in hand with the protests in the street, because music has the power of traveling instantly between people, between culture. Music has the power to create bridges where there's none. Music has the power of creating boundaries beyond languages and beyond hatred and violence. So there are songs throughout history that prove that they can ignite social change and just broader change in the world. And in my own experience, I witnessed how from a song that came from my heart and the power that it had and how much it inspired so many people, first in Tunisia and to this day, and beyond Tunisia in the Arab world and beyond the Arab world. So to me, as an artist, we have a responsibility to connect with people's demands, to give them a bigger stage. To me, the fact that I have the opportunity to hold a microphone and to travel and to give concerts around the world, that opportunity to me comes with responsibility, first towards myself, because I'm eager to see the world become a better place for me, for my children, and for everyone. And especially as a woman, I come from oppression. Like, being a woman is coming from oppression, whether you are a woman in Tunisia or even in Europe or America. So I am part of an oppressed people. So therefore, whether I am an artist, a singer, a filmmaker, I have the responsibility to speak up.
Do all artists have responsibility to speak up against for democratic rights, in your opinion?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, there's not many artists who speak up for justice and who feel that they have a responsibility, and especially nowadays that we have big online platforms that we can use. Unfortunately, most of the time is just used for noise and marketing. And even though as artists we have to market ourselves, to me it's very important that we also market our empathy, because in the end it just comes to empathy. I think if we all had a place in our hearts for somebody else's struggle, I think that's a big step to find peace.
Okay. And I don't know the name of the sender, but there is a question for Kamanthi. It's also very short. Was the debt trap responsible for the ouster of Rajapaksa's?
The debt trap, yes, and also the economic crisis. So both of them were responsible, I think.
How do you see this narrative of debt trap, especially Chinese debt trap in Sri Lanka?
Well, the Chinese debt trap, actually it's about they had the Rajapaksas had a big relationship with China, so they had a lot of investments coming in, most of them on the 99-year lease agreement. So in a way they were the Chinese people were coming and they were doing mega projects. Some of them were not feasible and they were unplanned projects which happened. So to date, we saw some of those, the environment impact assessments, etc., are not even out in the public domain. So it was done in like hush-hush deals. So, but we don't, still, people are trying to investigate the kind of transactions that happened, the kind of deals that happened even like 7 years ago, when the Rajapaksas were in power. So I think those were some of those projects, like the port city, for example, and then the entire Hambantota. Hambantota is the hometown for the Rajapaksas. So Hambantota had a facelift just after the Rajapaksas came into power, but that is one of the least populated areas in the country. But there are highways going on, elephant corridors. So there is human-elephant conflict as a result of highways in that area. So that is just in a nutshell. So those 99-year lease agreements, etc., were some of the main issues that contributed to the debt trap. So that is why I think they became very unpopular among the public.
Yeah, thank you so much. So one more question, this time from Pranita Rajbandari. So this comes by Facebook. It is for Tanuja. As a Gen Z activist in Nepal, how do young people today organize differently from past movements, and what advantages does that bring?
I would like to recall a few of the protests in Nepal. Since this time, young Gen Z movement got a lot of attention, but this is not the first time that young Nepalese are organizing, especially Gen Zs are organizing. There's this Save Nisgard campaign where young people, Gen Zs, they mobilized for 5 years and saved Nisgard forest. Similarly, there was Enough is Enough campaign, which was held on during COVID period. I think protest is something that opened the door, but does not give solution in itself. So mobilizing or coming on the street is not always the best answer. Sometimes you can contribute from whichever field you are from. For example, I'm a lawyer. I can contribute from my own profession. So it's not always necessary to mobilize from the street, but rather use the platform you have and speak the agenda you feel aligned with. So that would be the best.
So talking about this gender gap, about how young people organize, what do you, as a member of Gen Z, feel that people like me, older people like me, don't get about you, about your agendas, how you see the world? Is there a fundamental difference in how the Gen Z sees the world compared to how we, or like even the older generation does?
I think the struggle is same. Even though there is a generational gap, I feel the struggle is similar. However, I feel like we, GNG, we come from a place of a privilege and also a place, not just a privilege, but we come from a privilege and also a sort of lackeys at the same time. And we always been labeled as a fancy digital natives who does not know about the world. And I feel like that's where your generation does not get us. Because even though we have access to so many things right now, however, that access brings us a lot of struggle at the same times. And I feel like the older generation don't get our struggle in that sense. Because even my mom, she always says, like, you guys have everything, why you always complain? But a lot of things such as the mental health crisis that comes up with the expectation that our parents and also the country have from us, and also the climate crisis that we inherited by birth, which we didn't cause. So there are a lot of struggles like this that we fight silently, and our struggle has always been taken lightly by the older generation. I might sound harsh, but yeah.
So there was a revolution, the old government was overthrown, now there is a new interim government, now we'll soon have elections. How hopeful are you that your voice will be heard by the new regime, by the new government which we'll soon have in place, or do you fear that it will be continuation of the old order?
I'm hopeful, but at the same time, there are lots of doubts seeing all the populism being in rise. I think the major problem today we have that is yet to be addressed is the deficit of trust, because there is a trust gap within the generations. There is trust gap between citizen and the institution of the state. And until and unless this trust or the collective trauma of citizen is being addressed, this trauma will continue to haunt Nepal even in the coming days. And instead of acknowledging and addressing this trust gap, even our so-called new faces are busy dividing the society through they versus us narrative. And this is something that disappoints me at the moment. However, I'm hopeful that a lot of young people are coming out of their own bubble and trying to enter into a national politics, which is a good sign. But yeah, there's a room for doubt as well.
Okay, interesting. There's one more question for Emel. It comes from Santoshi Khimiri. It says, in the context of repression and exile, what role can artists play in preserving memory and resisting authoritarian narratives?
To me, I feel like artists are are the bearers of so much positive things, because that's the moment where we connect with the most beautiful that humans can bring. Because in the middle of times of chaos, it's very hard to look abroad and to look at the horizon and to have hope. And it's very hard to look beyond the negative things and the bad things and all the hatred and all the violence. So I feel that artists always bring this positive thing that as humans we are actually able to create beauty. We are able to create things that actually connect us more than we think. And that's why I think artists have a very beautiful mission, because, like I was saying, we have the capability of creating beauty and connect people in a very instant way and in a very beautiful way that can in itself bring a lot of hope that this is not hopeless. We can come out of this and we can build something meaningful out of the present chaos.
Okay. So there are a few more questions from the floor. Most of them are addressed at Tanuja. So there is one from Madan Timsena. The question is, भदौ 23 र 24 गते जेन्जी आन्दोलनमा संसद भवन बाहिर ढुङ्गा मोडा गेटमा आगजनी तपाईहरुको आन्दोलनको अंग थियो अनि 24 गते समस्त आन्दोलन र आगजनीको जिम्मा कसले लिने? This is in English maybe. Yeah. So there are a few more. So another is by engineer Dr. Mithilesh Kumar Jha, who is Chairman Management Committee at Kathmandu World School. What do you think is the biggest misconception about protests, and how can we work to change this perception in the context of Gen Z movement?
Yeah, regarding the September 9th event, I personally don't like to take the ownership of it, because our movement, which started by raising the slogan like, where is our tax-paid money? Where is our right to information and right to opinion? How could that protest burn down the parliament that is made out of our own tax-paid money? And how could that movement burn down the media houses? So the answer is quite clear, that our movement was heavily infiltrated by some vested group. Even though there was the public outrage because our friends were brutally killed, and September 9th is somewhat the repercussion of what happened on September 8th. However, all the vandalism and arson is something that JNG movement was against from the beginning. It was supposed to be the peaceful movement, and we collectively refused to take the ownership of whatever happened on September 9th. What was the next question?
Biggest misconception about protests, and how can we work to change this perception in the context of Gen Z movement?
Yeah, the biggest misconception is September 9th itself. And another misconception is the use of foreign forces in the movement. I think that was addressed by her. The answer is quite similar to that. Because the movement happened because the general people of Nepal felt the incompetency of government. That's why they were on the street. So the foreign interference was the biggest misconception, and also the criminalization of movement, JNG movement in regard to September 9th itself is another misconception. However, this misconception can be cleared by the publications of the report of Karki Commission.
Okay,
now it's all in his hand.
There are many questions, and I'll not be able to entertain them all, but some interesting ones. One of them is from Abhimanyu Basyal, Apollo International College. This is for Marzana. Bangladesh's recent withdrawal from the ICC World Cup has drawn global attention. Was this decision intended as a form of protest against the ICC, or were there deeper political, institutional, or ethical considerations behind it?
Yeah, we withdrawn from this year's World Cup because there was an incident about you asked me if there was an external force for the ousting of Sheikh Hasina, right? The external forces, we didn't see it during the protest, but after the government was thrown, we have seen a large portion of fake news is from Indian media houses that there were communal violence going on. Same happened here, like in IPL, you all know the IPL, about the IPL, the teams, the one team, KKR, like Kolkata Knight Riders maybe, they wanted to have one of our players, Mustafizur Rahman, but people in India, like I want to term them as fundamentalists as well, like they revolted, like they don't want to have a Bangladeshi player playing in the IPL. For that reason, our federation thought that it might be a security concern for our team to play in the in this year's ICC World Cup, not a political thing.
Okay, so I'll take one last question. This is from Lubaraj Neupane, Rural-Oriented Youth Movement, Nepal. So this will be for you, Kamanthi. The question is, looking at the recent protests in South Asia and across the world, most of them are seen as protests just for good governance, anti-corruption rather than for system change or structural change in the regime. Without having structural change, do you think these protests can bring sustainable change?
Yes and no, because yes, in the sense it can bring about regime changes like what happened in Sri Lanka. But in terms of structural change, it's a long shot because we have been a British colony, and then we had constitutions, we have archaic laws which need to be revisited. So I think in terms of bringing about tangible change, it takes a long time. But I think regime change and something and a government that is looking at the best interests of the people is a good start. I'm talking from the Sri Lankan perspective. So as long as they don't be reactive and they try to implement the kind of changes that people are looking for, I think that is the first step. And of course, protests will, I mean, in terms of structural change, it will happen, but not immediately.
Thank you so much, Kamanthi. And with this, we come to the end of our inaugural session, From Protests to Possibilities. Thank you, Emel. Thank you, Kamanthi. Thank you, Mahnaz. And thank you, Tanuja. Thank you so much.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our moderator and to all our panelists as well. Thank you very much. We would like to request them maybe for a group photograph before we conclude. So requesting everybody to please step forward. पुनः एकपटक यहाँहरु सम्पूर्णलाई हामी आजको यस कार्यक्रममा हार्दिक स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छौं. This is the first day of Kantipur Conclave 2026. हामीलाई प्रत्यक्ष प्रसारण लाइभबाट हेरिरहनु भएका सम्पूर्ण दर्शकवृन्दलाई पनि आजको यस कार्यक्रममा हामी पुनः स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छौं. पहिलो सेसन फ्रम प्रोटेस्ट टु पोसिबिलिटिज आन्दोलनबाट अवसरतर्फ हामीले भर्खरै सकाएका छौं. हामी धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद ज्ञापन गर्न चाहन्छौं हाम्रा सम्पूर्ण प्यानलिस्टहरुलाई पनि जसले आफ्नो देशको भोगाईबाट सिक्नु भएका कुराहरु हामीले बताउनु भयो. I think some very, very important lessons that they shared with us through their experiences that we need to be aware of, that we need to be careful of now that we're at this cusp of change. परिवर्तनको प्रश्न हामी आज यहाँ सोधिरहेका छौं. ट्रान्सफर्मेसनको कुरा गरिरहेका छौं. Change is the only constant भन्ने जस्ता कुराहरु अगाडि आइरहँदाखेरि when we are facing change, it's very important that we ask the right questions and we don't fall for the same old tricks. Now, moving forward to our second session, we want to share a very heartfelt story with all of you. यहाँहरुले Gen Z आन्दोलनको विभिन्न कथाहरु